Hello everyone, thanks for tuning in. In today's video I'm going to do a review of the Garmin ZUmo XT GPS unit. We'll talk about some of the features, what I think, or what I like and dislike about it, and whether I think it's a good accessory to add to your bike. So stay tuned. So I have the Garmin GPS mounted to my 2020 Suzuki DRZ 400 SM or Supermoto. I've mounted it on the left-hand side, but you could really mount it really wherever you like. Let me go over here and show exactly how it's mounted. So what comes in the box is all of the hardware, the wiring, everything you need to mount it, to power it, to make it fully functional. What I have done is I have mounted it to what I call switch power, or basically meaning the unit's only powered when the ignition is turned on. So it's spliced into a headlight, I think a headlight wire behind here. The other thing you can do is you can mount it to battery power. The drawback would be if you leave the unit on, it's going to drain your battery, so I didn't want to do that. So I had it mounted to switch power, and this is not an instructional installation video. I had a shop mount it for me because I don't really like splicing wires. They charge about an hour and a half of labor, so depending on what they're charging you, it could be something like $75 to maybe $150, depending on where you live. I've chosen to mount it directly to the bars. In the box it comes with some longer screws and some different mounting options where you could actually mount it to the clutch clamp, or you can mount it over here to the brake clamp. I've chose to mount it to the handlebars, but you could really mount it wherever you want. And it also comes with, it's essentially a RAM ball. It's labeled as Garmin, so I don't think it's actually a RAM mount, but you can loosen it and adjust it, and the angle and all that to get it right. And if you wanted to, this is a pretty short extension. You could get a longer extension if you wanted to sit up higher. All right, so let's go inside, and I will go over some of the features of the unit because it's there's a little bit of glare out here. One more thing before we go inside, I forgot to mention how this device is mounted, or how it connects. There's a little button back here that releases it, and it's very easy. With one hand you could even just pop it off and pop it back on, and that's it. Really simple. And also back here you have the power button. You can see that, and there's two additional spots, one for SD card so you can expand the memory, and there's also a slot down here for the power cable. So right now the way this mounting system works is the power cable is behind here, so you don't actually have to use this. But if you say we're inside and you want to charge your unit, you could use that connection there, and it comes with a USB connection, so you can charge it that way. All right, so let's go inside and look at some of the features. All right, we are inside now. Hopefully we can see the screen better, and I'm going to walk through some of the features of the device. So up top you have a couple different icons depending on where you are and what you're doing. This one is your signal strength, so your satellite signal strength. This is, hopefully it's tough to see, it's a little icon of a motorcycle, meaning you have it set up, the device set up for basically motorcycle mode. You can set it up for a car. This is showing the Bluetooth is set up to my phone, time, temperature. This little icon, which is again a little tricky to see, means you're connected to the iDrive app, which means you can get real-time updates. This is Wi-Fi because I'm at my house, and this is a fuel, not a fuel gauge, but you can set up the device to track how many miles you've gone and let you know when you need to refuel if your bike doesn't have a fuel gauge, if my bike doesn't. All right, so let's go over a couple of these kind of menu buttons on the bottom before we get into kind of the map. So there's a track button. If you hit the track, I don't have any tracks saved, but you can save tracks and it will show your average speed, your moving speed, how long you were moving, things like that. But I don't have any saved tracks, but that is what that is for. Music, I don't have any music. It would pair to your phone, and then if you had Bluetooth speakers in your helmet, you could play it that way. You could also, I guess, just play it over the speaker on this device. There's a little speaker on the back, but you're not going to hear that, say above like 15 miles an hour. Apps, this is where there's some interesting stuff. So there's an owner's manual, which is kind of cool. So instead of breaking out your phone and trying to Google something if you can't figure it out, there is a digital owner's manual. InReach, so if you have an InReach, a Garmin InReach device, maybe if you have one, if you do a lot of like off-roading, stuff like that, you can pair it to the GPS device, so that's cool. Bird's eye detection. This is pretty cool. So this essentially what it does is it lets you download a satellite image of some area. So we'll go up here and download, let's see, size. Let's do this. And download. Sure. And it's going to download, and I'm probably going to skip this section until it does download. Okay, so it downloaded. That only took about 10 seconds. But then what you get is, instead of the regular map, you get a bird's eye image of the area, which is good. Probably not useful if you're just doing regular road, driving, navigating. But if you're doing off-road, stuff like that, I think that's a really cool feature. You are limited, of course, to how much you can download based on the memory capability of the device. There is a slot in the back where you can put a SD card to give you more memory. Trip planner, pretty self-explanatory. You can plan a new trip, a start location, add locations along the way. That's pretty cool. You can share a route, you can share a track. What else? Smart notifications. This is pretty cool. Well, it would be cool if it worked as it's supposed to. So this hooks up to your phone, and you'll get notifications on your screen if someone calls, someone emails, and you can choose what you get notified for. So if you don't want to have your social media notifications, you can not choose it. But what I've found, unfortunately, is for whatever reason, I can't get my phone to notify me of messages. Phone calls get notified, but messages don't. And I have an iPhone, and most people I talk to are iPhone, so it's all iMessage. It's not actually a text. Can't get it to work. Pretty annoying. I've downloaded or I've re-updated everything, disconnected, reconnected. Doesn't work for me. That's kind of a big gripe. I haven't dug into it or sent an email to Garmin to see if they can tell me what to do, but that's a bit of a problem. That's about service history. This is kind of cool. You can keep track of all of your service intervals on your bike on here. So if that's something you want to do, you can do that. Okay, let's go back. Volume, pretty self-explanatory. Let me go to settings. So in the settings, there's things like update software. So the software updates when you're connected to Wi-Fi, and will let you know if it needs to be updated. Like right now, I think I do need to update something. Stand by. Okay, yeah, so looks like my software is up to date, but I can update my maps if I want to. I'm not going to start that now. Then you have a couple other settings. How do you want things displayed? Navigation settings. Do you want to, what's the calculation mode? Fastest time, shortest distance. Do you want to, avoid U-turns, interstate, all those type of things, which is kind of cool. You can set up your wireless networks. This is pretty cool, driver assistance. So what this does is you can set up to a couple things, but it'll let you know when you're speeding. I don't know if that's useful or not. You can plan brakes. This is the thing I think is kind of cool. Hopefully I never have to use it, but automatic incident detection. So what this does is an incident notification. I don't know exactly what would trigger this, but I think the theory is if you get in an accident, somehow the device knows, and you can select a contact from your contacts, and it's going to notify them that something's happened to you. Again, I'm not exactly sure what it's going to do or what triggers it. If I were to drop this thing on the floor, is that going to think it's in a crash and call the person I've set up? I'm not exactly sure, but it's a cool feature. Hopefully you never have to use it though. Let's see, some other display display settings, how bright you want it. With the brightness, and I didn't mention this earlier, I'm going to go back to the main screen. So there's a battery icon here because I'm not plugged into power. So this lets you know how long the battery's going to last. So Garmin says that this thing will last for 2 hours on full bright. When I first got the unit, I didn't have it wired into my motorcycle, so I did drive around with it mounted up and to see how long it would last. Definitely not 2 hours. Maybe an hour, 45 minutes. So if you're going to get this and think, oh, I don't need to wire it to my bike, I'll just charge it up each time. Probably not going to be realistic. I'd say you need to wire it up. Maybe if you had the brightness set really low. There's also a setting where the screen doesn't stay on all the time. So it would basically, like your cell phone, it would lock out or go black after a certain number of minutes or seconds. But I think that kind of defeats the purpose of the GPS. Okay, so those are the, I guess the menu features. Let me stop this because I think I had started a navigation. So when you actually get to using it as a GPS unit to go somewhere, you go to where to. There's a couple ways you can input a destination. You can go up here to search, and you can type something in, almost like you type something into like a Google search. So things like restaurants, maybe a motorcycle dealership, that's probably going to come up. If it's recent and it's been in business a while, but your friend Bob's house isn't in here. Bob's house isn't going to come up. But something like, I don't know, let's see, let's do Duncan. And here's another thing. You'll notice on the screen you don't get all of the letters, because the letters are set up to be pretty big so that you can hit it with gloves on. So if you want the rest of the keypad, you have to hit this little button, and that gives you the rest of the keypad. At first I thought that was kind of annoying, but you get used to it. You go back. So this would be how it would work if you want to search for something. Diner. It'll give you a list of all the diners around here. And then there you go, pick one. The other thing you can do, if you want to put in, like you're going to a friend's house, you have to actually go in and hit the address, input the address. So you start with the street number, then you hit done, you go to the street name, and then it will probably give you a list of the towns around you that have that address. And sometimes you have to, if you're going out of state, you might have to put in the state. But that's how that works. It has, home set up, so you can set up, where your home is all the time. And then if you're away from home, just hit that. Recent, of course, is just where you've recently put in searches, categories, gas stations, attractions, restaurants, lodging. Essentially, what this is just a way to find places. There's TripAdvisor stuff, which is going to be hotels and restaurants. There's Overlanding, iOverlander, which I don't use, but it's basically for overlanding. Campgrounds, there's motorcycle locations, which are essentially dealerships and mechanics. National parks, there's a history channel app, which is I haven't used, but I'm assuming it's historical sites. But again, these are all just ways to find places grouped by some meaningful way, which is cool. I mean, there's just gives you different ways to find things. Let me actually pick a location and show you what happens when you pick something. All right, so let's do this. So as soon as you pick a location, this is under recents, but if you had searched for something, you hit where you want to go, you're going to have a couple options. You could just hit go, and that's essentially going to start the GPS, and it's going to start routing you whatever your default setup is, most likely like quickest time. If you hit this little orange button, this is the Garmin Adventurous Routing. And what it does is you can slide this scale back and forth. If you slide it to the right, that is essentially what it's supposed to do, is find you roads that are fun to drive on a motorcycle. So twisty roads, things like that. If you slide it over here to the left, that's just going to be the quickest route. So depending on where you are, where you're going, what your options are, there may be a big difference between not adventurous and adventurous. In my case, how I've used this, or what it seems to be to me, is there's really only a couple options. Like there's really 4 levels here, but how I've used it in the past is really no difference between this and this. Again, if you're in an area that has lots of road options, maybe there would be a difference. But I will say, you put on the most adventurous, it does find you twisty roads. It's not just avoiding the highway. It does avoid the highway basically, but it also does find you twisty roads, which is kind of cool. So let's hit go.
Please drive to highlighted route.
And there you go. Let's zoom out just a little bit here. So it's telling you where to go. And you'll notice on the screen, we have the satellite imagery because we downloaded it. If you didn't have the satellite imagery, the whole screen would just look like the standard map. You probably heard the audio. It's pretty loud. Of course, we're inside and we're not moving. There's no other noise. But if you're at a stoplight with a closed face helmet on, you can hear it. I'd say probably above like 15, 20 miles an hour with a closed face helmet, you're not going to hear it. Of course, unless you have Bluetooth speakers in your helmet and you can hear it through that. When you're actually navigating to something and you have this screen up, you have a couple options. If you hit which showing the mile per hour, which is 0 because I'm not moving, you'll get a couple kind of other looks at, you know, how fast have you gone, how long you've been going, what's your average speed, max speed, things like that. If you hit the icon over to the right, it's going to show you, by default, it's arrival time, but it will show you, you know, time to arrival, distance to arrival. If you had multiple stops, it would show you that too. So that's all pretty cool. If you hit the little ellipsis over there on the right, it gives you a couple options essentially, which, you know, may or may not be useful. I will show you what happens when you get, say, a smartphone notification. So I'm going to call my cell phone, which is paired to the device right now, and I'll show you what it looks like. You'll see it says incoming call. It's my house phone. And now if you did have Bluetooth speakers on your helmet and that was all connected, you could hit the play button and you could take the call on your helmet, which is kind of cool. So it's a cool feature. It works. Like I just wish it worked better for text messages. I don't know why it doesn't. One thing I do kind of like, and I saw another review where someone actually didn't like this feature. So the call is hung up. Usually you have a missed call. This icon or this notification stays up for a really long time. I don't mind that. I think that's a good idea because at least the way the unit's set up on my bike, the GPS unit's really not in like my direct line of sight. So I kind of have to glance down a little bit to see it. And I'm obviously not always looking down. So I like the fact that it stays up there for a while. So you'll know and you'll see it. And if you want, you can just dismiss it and go back to navigating. All right, so let's jump on the bike and go for a ride, and I'll kind of give you my final thoughts on the GPS unit. All right, so now we're on the bike. We have the GPS turned on. I'm going to go for a little ride and just tell you my final thoughts and opinions about the GPS unit. I'm not going to go over the features really while I'm riding because I covered that when I covered all the features of the device inside. But hopefully you can see, at least now that we're out in the sun, there might be some glare on the screen, but at least for me, it's very bright. It's compatible with gloves. So all the features and everything I showed you how it worked inside obviously works when it's mounted to the bike and you're wearing gloves. So that's all cool. All right, so let's go for a quick little ride and I will tell you, you know, what I think about this. All right, on the bike. So, I mean, overall, I think there's a lot of cool features with this GPS unit. I think it's easy to use, it's intuitive, the screen is bright, you know, it's easy to use with gloves, all good things. Has a lot of cool features that you might not have with just, say, your smartphone. It's waterproof, all good stuff, all cool stuff. So I think those are all pros. The cons, I think the two biggest cons for me are the price and the fact that I personally have had some issues with the connectivity with my smartphone. So, you know, I don't know. I just don't know if it's worth over $500. I paid $400, and for $400, I think maybe you can justify it. I don't know about $500. $350 definitely. Or if you just, you know, have a lot of money to burn and you're okay with spending that type of money. But for some people that might just be a little bit too much. One thing I'm not sure if it's coming through in the video, but when I'm looking straight ahead, the GPS unit isn't really in my line of sight. I kind of have to look down, and that's just not a function of the GPS unit. That's really just because the way my bike's set up and I sit so high up and the bars are so low. That's not really, again, a complaint about the GPS. Looks like someone was going too fast. But yeah, so back to the unit. Yeah, would I buy it again? I think I'd buy it again. Again, I got it for $400. I'd probably buy it again for $400. I probably wouldn't buy it for $500. So that's my thoughts on it. Hopefully, if you're in the market for this GPS unit and you're kind of on the fence, hopefully this video gave you some idea of whether it's worth it or not. So thanks for tuning in. If you liked the video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe for some future motorcycling content. All right, till next time. Thanks, everyone.